Hey, everybody, welcome back to another week of the Fixate Binge Podcast. I am your host, your weekly host, maybe not with the most, but I am your host, Joe. Thanks for being with us this week. I hope you've had a great week. I think I've had a pretty good week. I've been watching some really interesting things. It's weird how my taste in television and movies, it will have ebbs and flows. Sometimes there'll be things really worth streaming and watching on TV, and then it seems like there will be a month or two and the quality dips. Like, I don't know, it seems like the streaming giants might be sandbagging or holding off until they release their better content. But I'll run through a real quick gamut of things I've been watching, things that are worth your time. And I don't want to take too much time doing that because I have a fantastic guest on the podcast. Can't wait to introduce you to him. We had a great discussion, and I'll get to that in just a quick second. But right away, I finished streaming with my son the second season on Hulu of Paradise, and it is great. It's a really great series. I don't know how they're going to conclude it, but if season 2 is how they go out, I would be okay with that. So a really great television series. I urge you to check that out. That's, season 1, season 2, streaming now on Hulu. That's actually a really great show with a lot of interesting, well-written characters. The other thing that I just finished watching and reviewing, if you follow me on Letterboxd, you can check out my review for it, is The Punisher, One Last Kill. And it stars, of course, Jon Bernthal, who is the Punisher, or AKA Frank Castle. And he did 2 seasons for Netflix before Disney acquired the rights, distribution rights, and creative control over the character and everything else, which makes sense because it's part of Marvel Studios or Marvel content. And the concern that I had was when Disney got those rights from Netflix, I thought, yeah, there's probably a way to make Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage somewhat family friendly. But when it comes to the Punisher, to do that character justice, to get that character right, I don't know if that's going to work for Disney's brand. I mean, it's very possible that they'll just shelve the show and we won't really see Frank Castle. We certainly won't see Jon Bernthal play the character anymore. Well, I couldn't be more wrong, thankfully wrong, when I saw the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, and you've got Jon Bernthal playing Frank Castle, playing the Punisher, and he's featured prominently in the trailer. I don't know how big of a part he'll have. It's a cameo, walk-in, walk-on, whatever it may be, but that's kind of nice because now we've got the Punisher One Last Kill, which is 44 minutes long, and I despaired a little bit over that. That bummed me out a little bit. I'm like, only 44 minutes? But man, they packed a lot into those 44 minutes. If you're a fan of the Punisher series, if you're a fan of the comic books, if you're just a fan of Jon Bernthal as a very accomplished actor in his own right, I think you're going to absolutely love this 44-minute, and it might be a one-off, just a special featuring his character. Now, Kevin Feige, who runs Marvel over at Disney, he may have just released this 44-minute essentially an update on what Frank Castle has been doing since the events of the series when it ended, and maybe that helps bridge things into Spider-Man. Well, I don't know. There's no secret scene at the end of The Punisher One Last Kill, but there's one thing for sure is Jon Bernthal was absolutely born to play this character, and no hate to Ray Stevens, no hate to Thomas Jane, or Dolph Lundgren. How's that for movie trivia? Nobody has played Frank Castle as the Punisher better than Jon Bernthal. And it really comes down to the writing. And it comes down to Jon Bernthal's commitment to embody that character and play the psychology and to go to dark places to play a very dark and tortured character. And he puts on a masterclass about how to do that. And so if you are a comic book fan, if you like the Punisher series, if you're a Jon Bernthal fan, this is just a great one-off 44-minute, wonderful, very, very violent short film, TV film, whatever you want to call it. And I urge you to check that out. But you can also read my review on Letterboxd, like I said. The other thing that I've been watching on TV, and then I'm gonna get to something I just watched in the cinema in just a minute. But the other thing I'm watching on TV, which I love, it's 3 episodes in. I was hooked after the first episode. The second episode, now I'm double hooked, and the third episode I'm harpooned. So there's no way this thing is going to get its hooks out of me. Is Widow's Bay, and yes, I'm kind of no pun intended by using all these fishing metaphors, but Widow's Bay with stars Matthew Rhys, and it's on Apple TV, and it's a mix of, oh my gosh, I don't know, it's a mix of Twin Peaks, it's a mix of Midnight Mass with some humor in it. I mean, Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, David Lynch's Twin Peaks, but it's mixed with some humor, and but it's very dark. I really enjoyed this. My wife and I are hooked. We can't hooked again. We can't wait to get all the episodes under our belt. Extremely good. Extremely. It's the best thing on Apple TV you could watch right now. No comparison, really, in my opinion. The other thing I just started watching, and I'm only 1 episode in, and this is also very, very good. A little bit more darker toned. Is the third it's like an anthology series. Each season, it's a little bit like True Detective on HBO. Each season doesn't really story-wise connect to the previous season, but it's The Terror on AMC Plus or Shudder. Now, the first season of The Terror, I praised that a couple years back. I loved it. Thoroughly creepy, about survivors who are stuck in the ice in the Arctic, and they're being stalked by a monster. And it's based on a true story, and it's very, very, very good. Production values are bar none. The second one, I can't remember what the full title was, but it was The Terror, and it takes place in a Japanese internment camp during World War II in America. Well, this third one stars Dan Stevens of Downton Abbey, Dan Stevens from The Guest. I like Dan Stevens. He's a very great actor, very, very watchable. And he ends up, it's kind of a modern day telling, he ends up in a mental health hospital. And he's wrong. It's a little bit like Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's really not supposed to be there. But while he's there, nothing is as it seems at this mental institution. It's very creepy. Some very horrifying things are happening. Parts of it remind me a little bit of Session 9. If you're a horror fan and you've seen Session 9 with David Caruso, and I urge you, and Josh Lucas is in it, I urge you to check out The Terror, The Devil in Silver, I believe is what the full title is, and it's on AMC Plus. I think the first 3 episodes are out. After this podcast, I'm gonna watch the next 2 episodes that are available. It's very, very good. It's very, very creepy, very dark toned. No humor in it like Widow's Bay, but you're going to enjoy this. So the last thing I want to talk about, and then let's get this regular podcast started. I am still blown away by Curry Barker's obsession. Now, Curry Barker, if you're not familiar, he is a YouTuber. He's made a lot of short YouTube shorts, short films, and it's been interesting to see what he's been doing, because he ended up releasing one of his films in 2024 called Milk and Cereal. Of course, cereal is a pun. It's spelled serial as in S-E-R-I-A-L, as in serial killer. And it was actually very well conceived, Milk and Cereal, and it was done very well. And you could tell it had a limited budget, but it didn't hurt the film at all. The story was what was most important. Well, he's done a film called Obsession. It stars Indy Navarrete and Michael Johnston and Cooper Tomlinson. How's that from memory? I'm just recalling these names. Now, Cooper Tomlinson, I believe, has done a lot of these shorts on YouTube with Curry Barker on their YouTube channel, which is huge. But Obsession is excellent. It is one of the finest horror films of the year. The performance by Indy Navarrete, I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly, I've never seen her in anything else that I can recall, is horrifying. It's chilling. She does such a great job here. The film is just a psychological nightmare. And when the film careens to its horrifying conclusion, I'm not giving anything away, but for one of the characters in this film, their nightmare is just beginning. And this thing shocked me, horrified me, disturbed me. I'm still thinking about it the next day. It's 2 days since I've seen it. I saw this on Friday. I'm recording this on Sunday. I'm still thinking of images and things that I watched in this film. It's very, very good. So if you have if you have a chance to see it on the big screen, I urge you to go check this out. It's on the big screen right now, so you don't have to check this out on YouTube or the small screen, and you can see it on the big screen. And it is worth the price of admission. It is absolutely worth being in a dark cinema, enjoying this, and seeing it now versus waiting a little bit later into its run. The more people are in that cinema with you, the better the viewing experience. And I mean that in the sense that this thing had half of us jumping out of our seats throughout. So, and I'm not saying they're like formulaic jump scares, but there were surprising twists and turns in this film, which I just enjoyed. It wasn't full of formulaic horror tropes. There's some real creativity about this film. I've compared it to a nightmarish, dark version of of Big with Tom Hanks. That you have this mysterious artifact with mysterious powers, and it has a mysterious and damaging effect or a surprising effect on the characters in the film. I've said too much. And the less you know going in, the better the experience is. So I'm not going to say anything else. Now, we're here to my guest. I'm really excited to bring my guest on. Earlier in the week, I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with a new emerging voice out of New York City who is directing films. He has a very artistic perspective on film and cinema, and the way he shoots his films. It's very Gonzo-esque, but it's very unique. It's certainly a very unique style. He shoots, as you'll hear, on Super 8mm, and that's an aesthetic choice which he's gone with. And I just enjoyed his film. Now, his film is called MATADOR Bolero, and it's the debut, the acting debut of musician artist Yves Tumor, who I don't know much about Yves Tumor except that this guy is very interesting. Gives me David Bowie vibes in the film, gives me David Bowie vibes as an artist and a performer. He's performed at Coachella. He's very well known. And so this film is going to generate some buzz because it's his acting debut, and he features prominently throughout this film. I don't want to give anything away because that's where you'll discover some things about this film and the making of it and the decisions that Jonathan Rosado, director and writer of MATADOR Bolero, he explores this. And so without further ado, let me shut up. Without further ado, this is my interview with Jonathan Rosado, the writer and director of MATADOR Bolero. Okay, Jonathan Rosado, holy cow. I can't wait to talk about your exciting film. I believe this is the third film that you have done. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true.
It's amazing. So you are the writer and director, and you even star in it. I mean, you co-star in this. It's MATADOR Bolero, and this I wrote a review for it, which I really enjoyed. And in prep for this, you had made some recommendations of some influences that you had, which I'm very glad because it allowed me to put on the lenses that I would normally not put on when I approached your film. Because unfortunately, I haven't seen your earlier work. And I'm so glad you recommended that because I was able to adjust the lenses and I was able to look at it with different eyes. And I just really enjoyed this whole viewing experience. It was just crazy and eclectic and unique. I don't even know where to begin. How did this idea germinate? How did this come to fruition? What were your first thoughts on this?
Um, you know what? I started shooting Matador kind of right after my last film premiered. Brutalist Couture premiered in July 2024.
Okay.
And by late August, I was already shooting the next one, which is kind of insane.
Wow.
Yeah. But granted, I didn't really have the whole thing worked out. I was kind of just filming random pieces of things that I didn't really know how it would fit in later.
Yeah.
But sort of felt the inkling internally to like get some things out on film. Um, it's really hard to say where these things sort of come from.
Yeah.
It definitely was, I'll say this, it was definitely quite a drawn out process of coming up with things, filming them. I would say overall, the film was sporadically shot over almost 18 months.
Wow.
But actual days of filming would be much less. It would probably be closer to just like a Hollywood film shoot. Is just a lot of time in between. Yeah, it kind of all just came together slowly but surely.
That's incredible, especially to hear how busy you are. I mean, that's crazy to go from finishing a film in July and then within what, 6 weeks you're making another one. I always compare that image to like Tarzan in the jungle. He's got a hold of one vine and he's swinging on that one vine, but he's already thinking about the next vine he wants to grab so he can stay moving. Because sometimes with creatives and artists like yourselves, staying moving and staying creative is your lifeblood. It just seems that way. So to hear that from you, yeah, that's awesome. This film, when you look at it, and we can talk about the particular specifics of how you shot it and why you made the choices you did, but it has this kind of midnight art house look, 70s noir, almost a grindhouse grit to it, and you clearly, I mean, ostensibly, you intended for that. What was your decision to shoot on Super 8 millimeter? Is that something that you've always shot your other films on, or was that just a conscious choice? I'm going to go in a different direction with this, and we're going to shoot on Super 8 millimeter.
Mm-hmm. So I already owned a Super 8 camera at the time, so that definitely did play a role into it. I kind of harmlessly bought a cheap Super 8 years before I even got into the idea of cinema or like doing that myself.
Yeah.
Just as kind of a fun thing to get. And I shot a couple rolls, but really I had no experience using a camera, nothing at all. I totally love and am influenced from, at least on terms of cinema, from works around the 70s for sure. I think for me, wasn't so much as a decision to come off as like retro as it was to differentiate myself from kind of a lot of the films that are being released nowadays where they're shot on like 4K or 6K digital.
Yeah.
And like everything's colored to like kind of look like a Netflix show or like something like that. I just wanted to stand out. Like cinema used to be a thing where there was 3 channels on TV and you would go to see a movie and it was like a whole experience. But now people my age, younger and older, are constantly on their phones, constantly on TV, and you're sort of bombarded with digital media and digital photos constantly, and it becomes a bit generic. So yeah. I thought it just looked more like cinema to me to shoot on film.
I appreciate that because you're right. It seems that there is such an aesthetic that's gone mainstream for everything to be in perfect focus, for everything to be clean, sharp, defined colors, and sometimes I'm like, that kind of takes me out of it a little bit because It feels like I'm looking at an immersive 3D painting, and that's fine. It has its place. I mean, I'll enjoy Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey on the IMAX when it comes out, because that is its own animal. It's its own thing. And I expect that. With other great, cinema auteurs that put these mammoth Cecil B. DeMille epics on the big screen, and that has its place. But what I liked about yours is that your film felt grounded, it felt real. And the Super 8, it added an aesthetic to it that gave it a grimy inner city New York feel to it, and that's kind of works with the tone of your film. Your choice to shoot on Super 8 might have been a convenient one because you already owned a camera, but it absolutely works with the tone of your film, is what I'm saying.
Totally. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. This film was just really full of a lot of imagery for me, and and I don't want to give away the plot. I don't want to give away too many plot pieces because I would like my listeners to seek your film out, whether they can catch it in the cinema, whether they can stream it. I would like them to go in as fresh as they can, but I would like to give them some ideas of some influences you're working with. I felt that there was a feminist message in your film. Some might look at this and go, "I didn't get that from that." I might have the opposite impression, but I felt that you were saying things about female autonomy, and you were saying things about the female body, and you were saying things even about fertility and things like this. It was it is just so different. Am I wrong here? I don't know if I've got those things wrong or if I'm way off base.
No, you're not wrong. I don't want to speak too much on the specific meaning of every image of the film because I feel like it starts to demystify things, but you're absolutely right that the film obviously does have a conceptual element to it. To me, I don't feel like this is really giving anything away, so I'll say this.
Sure.
But there's clearly a lot of egg symbolism in the movie and egg imagery, and that alludes to obviously the literal meaning of fertility, like you were saying, but also just metaphorically the idea of rebirth, personal rebirth, spiritual rebirth, things like that. And I also don't think this gives away too much, but there's certainly a thematic quality of I guess I was sort of concerned with expressing this idea of like entering the age of Aquarius and like merging with technology for better or for worse. There's definitely a lot of things in there. Yeah.
And that's where I felt like when I was glad that, speaking with Cole, who set this up, your producer, or I'm not sure who he is. He's great. Whatever he is, he's doing for you. He's doing great because he sent over some useful information you might want to check out. Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain from 1973. I'm like, I've heard about that film. I haven't seen it. It's time. I've been looking for a reason to watch it. Now I've got a reason. So I watched it. Absolutely blown away. And the things that you're talking about in your film, where you're exploring a lot of different themes, and you're not exactly trying to give a specific, and like a lot of great art, you're not trying to give a specific interpretation. You're letting the viewer come to your work and interact with your art and come away with whatever they think it is. Your job as the director, it sounds like what you're doing here is a lot like Jodorowsky, that name. Don't say that 10 times real fast. It's like what he's doing. It's like, what did you think? What did it mean to you? And this is something, and I know I'm sandboxing here, but I know that David Lynch refused to explain his films. It drove a lot of viewers nuts because he said, I'm not here to tell you that your impression or interpretation of my film is right or wrong. What did you think it meant? You're not wrong. What did you think it meant? They say something completely different. You're not wrong. It is what you think. And I like that about The Holy Mountain, but I also really enjoyed that about Matador Bolero. It challenges you. It throws a lot of different things at you. And the egg imagery was really about transformation as well for me. And I enjoyed it throughout. It was so good. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the egg imagery because there's the golden egg and then there's the larger egg. And I was like, oh, this is really that's good.
Well, thanks so much for the kind words also. That was really nice of you to say.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, what you're doing here is you're insisting on giving us something unconventional. You're thinking outside the box, literally, and you're giving us something that can kind of arouse us out of our kind of cruise control stupor of just streaming, audio wallpaper on Netflix nonstop. Mm-hmm. And your film says, hang on, I'm going to take it back to cinema roots. We're going to show you what this is about. And I had vibes of Inland Empire from David Lynch. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there were elements of this that I'm like, this is very similar. And I'm not saying you modeled your film after Inland Empire by David Lynch, but I'm like, tonally, and some of the decisions that you made are very reminiscent of Inland Empire, which was awesome because I don't see hardly anybody do that.
Yeah.
So
Inland Empire was actually a big film for me, especially I would say like 4 or 5 years ago when I first saw it. It definitely influenced me. And it actually inspired me mostly, if anything, to get the same camera as David Lynch shot Inland Empire on, which is what was my primary camera for my first film, Viridian Hue. It was shot partly on Super 8 and partly on Sony PD-150, I think is the one that Lynch uses. It's like a broadcast camera, like low resolution broadcast camera. But I guess I have to credit that film with kind of planting the idea in my head that I can make a movie to begin with, because that camera is fairly inexpensive. And prior to this, I was thinking, to make a movie, I would need at least, $100,000-$200,000 and all this stuff. And then I ended up, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I ended up getting the camera. I have nothing to do with this, but it seemingly lifted from a college. I won't say what college, but it has the name etched in on the side. And I didn't ask the guy when I bought it off him, but.
That's perfect. This is the type of stuff this is the type of trivia that is always fascinating. And I think that's great. I mean, whatever it takes for art to be made. I remember watching Joe Carnahan when his first major movie, it was Narc with the late Ray Liotta and Jason Patric. A great film. But I remember there was a part where this cop was on the street and he was just asking random people on the street, have you seen this person? Because it was this missing persons thing at one point. And I'm like, how did he film that? And it turns out the film ran out of funding. They didn't have money for permits. So they just started filming, going up to random people and conducting a real investigation. And I'm like, that's so incredible to just say, we're going to find a way to make this project continue. We're going to get through it. So you got to steal a camera from a college.
Totally. That's like in the Werner Herzog school of thought.
Yeah.
I will say this, going back to what you said a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with me trying to do something new. I don't think it's so much me trying to force, not that you were implying that anyway, but it's not me coming in with a conscious idea of trying to do something new. I think it's more to me like, I feel that we've gotten to a point in cinema, even though it's arguably one of the newer art forms, that it seems like we're at a similar period with cinema than comparable to, let's say, with fine art, when people stopped painting, like Raphael, where everything is absolutely realistic and exactly like photorealistic. Okay.
Right.
Like, I kind of think it's futile in a way, in my opinion, to make just a very simple, just to throw out an example, like boy meets girl, love story, something like that. I feel like it would be kind of disingenuous or futile, I guess, for me to think that I could make something better than what's already been done in that regard. It would sort of be like trying to copy like a Renaissance painting. I would rather just go, full de Kooning with it or something, do something totally different. Right. Not to compare myself to de Kooning, but just the abstract line of thought, do something different.
Yeah. And I completely understand that. And I like that, because I think great art should challenge us. We shouldn't have a spoon-fed interpretation. And you know what? There's a market out there for people who will buy their DVDs from Walmart bins that want a very spoon-fed narrative, a very spoon-fed thought. These people don't really want to immerse themselves in a cinematic journey. They want to sit on their couch and they want to scroll on their phone and then just have that audio wallpaper on their television, and they can kind of mildly regard it. But your film challenges you to, like a lot of great avant-garde films, challenges you to remain focused and just immerse yourself in the experience. And I'm so glad, because Lynch demanded that from his audiences. Jodorowsky has clearly demanded that from viewers of The Lost Mountain, and your film, Matador Bolero, has certainly required that. There were more than a few times I would watch a scene and I would pause it and I go, did I just see what I think I just saw? And rewind it and go, I did. Holy cow. Your film took me in directions I wasn't expecting, and I appreciated that. I absolutely loved that. It was a fresh experience. And I'm not saying you were trying to be different for the sake of being different, but you were clearly trying to give us art to think about.
Mhm. Totally. I think, again, not to give away too much because people haven't
Yeah.
seen it yet, but even starting from the first scene of the film, I try to set a pacing that's totally counterintuitive to like the TikTok rhythm that people are living through, to
Yeah.
just sort of impose this different atmosphere of like immediately, like you have to accept that this is going to go
Right.
at a different pace, and you will certainly be rewarded for it, but you got to learn to be an audience member. And then the other thing is, certainly avant-garde films and the sort of stranger art house stuff always leans into challenging the audience, giving something visually heavy. But it's interesting because I was thinking the other day that even films that aren't avant-garde, to me, as a viewer and as a fan of cinema myself, I'm not so interested, to be honest, with story. To me, story is a necessary evil. When you look at a film as mainstream as, let's say, Pulp Fiction, for example.
Right.
Pulp Fiction, amazing movie, obviously. The reason I love it, I can only speak for myself, but the reason I love it is not the story as much as Quentin Tarantino, obviously is a great screenwriter. I'm more interested in the characters, the soundtrack, the general aesthetic. And I would argue that whether the audience realizes it or not, they're more concerned with those things too and the themes of the movie than the actual story of like, where are they going to hide the body? Why did Bruce Willis, he threw the fight, what's going to happen?
Right.
Do we really give a shit? Kind of,
Yeah.
kind of, but I care a lot more about like Sam Jackson, like just saying the coolest shit ever and then
Sure.
an awesome song playing. I get so much more out of that than I do of like a story development. It's just to me.
Yeah. I thank you for citing that, because I found myself less concerned with what was in the briefcase.
Right. Yeah.
Who cares? You're seeing some amazing vignettes, some amazing scenes, and as only Tarantino could do. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so glad. I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to talk a little bit about. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about your casting decision, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly. Yves Tumor. Is that correct?
Yves Tumor.
Yves Tumor. Okay.
Yes.
I'll get that right eventually.
No worries.
Yves Tumor. And so when you were writing this film and you were conceptualizing this film, did you have him in mind for this part, or did you and Yves Tumor collaborate and work on this together and develop this character together?
So it's interesting because with the way that I typically make films, I don't like to have everything squared away to a T before I start doing things. I like to have a vague idea of what's supposed to happen in the movie, maybe a few key scenes I'll write a script for or a plot outline, but a lot of it is left up to how I feel on set. I leave a ton of room to shift direction in case, I show up, it feels like the vibe is different than I thought. I'll slyly alter things. So I can't say I thought of putting even from the very beginning. When I started making the film, I didn't really know, what it was going to be. I certainly didn't think it was going to be this. The stuff with Yves came in much later, I'll say, and it was sort of between me and my producer, like kind of this far-fetched idea, like, yeah, we love him, he'd be awesome for the movie, but obviously he's not going to respond to us. And then it turns out, we pitched the idea, he ended up loving it right away to our amazement, and kind of went from there.
That's amazing, because I didn't know enough about him. Certainly didn't know enough about him to even pronounce his name correctly, but I know now, Yves Tumor. But I'm looking at his influence in music. I'm like, this guy performs at Coachella. This guy's huge. He's a huge influence. And that's where I had to realize that I was a generation too far removed for him to be in my radar. But I mean, his screen presence, you can't stop looking at him. I mean, I've heard this. I mean, there are some people that could just blend into the scenery. And then there are some people, they have this quality, and it's very hard to teach it. It's hard to just be, almost have to be born with it. You stand out, you bring screen presence. And that's certainly what he brought to your film. He definitely has a presence, and it was different. I have never seen anything quite like it. And I don't know, what was it like working with him in the filming process?
Yves, coolest guy ever, honestly. Like, I'll just be honest. I'm not trying to, like, blow smoke up his ass or anything, but from the moment he comes, I mean, the guy's like a real rock star. I feel like I was in the presence of like 70s Keith Richards or something. Like, he totally is that guy. It's not
Or David Bowie,
Yeah, David Bowie, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just, honestly, I would say what I learned the most from him was he's so sure about his opinions and like his ideas for how things should be. He never second guesses himself, and honestly, he's usually right. But also, back to what you were saying, his screen presence is like insane.
Yeah.
His image is amazing, as is obviously for music. But I was shocked that no one had thought to put him in a film before. To me, it was a no-brainer that this guy would be incredible in a movie. Working with him on set was crazy too. I'm trying to think what's a fun story. Oh yeah, so we're filming the first scene we did with him, and I asked, because there's no dialogue, and I asked, "Oh, do you want me to play any music during it?" And he requested Prince Makeup, and he had that on replay like 6 times while we were shooting. And it was just, I don't know. To me, that was like the most surreal thing. It like kind of hit me in that moment. Like, wow, this is really happening.
That's such a rock star thing to do, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is really cool. I mean, he was, I don't think this will be his one and only film. I think there'll be other offers because his presence is so mesmerizing and memorable. I mean, he really makes his mark in this film, and of course he plays this kind of otherworldly, ethereal kind of cosmic watcher, Atom, Atom, and he is observing and kind of musing a little bit on what's happening. And I don't want to give it away, but it's a very clever addition to your film, which I liked. So you also have a very well respected indie actress. You have Kansas Bowling in this, and she's done a lot of stuff. And I just wanted to ask, what was it like working with her? Did you collaborate, or was it just a good fit for you? I mean, it works on film. It works on film, but I always want to find out, what was it like working with them and collaborating with them?
Yeah. So Kansas is great. She's super down to earth, super nice. How we got her was through my distributor, who actually also distributed her last feature a few years ago, Cuddly Toys, and they're personally just good friends with each other. I had seen Cuddly Toys, I was impressed by it, and I just thought she'd be a good fit. To me, she's, I don't want to say, I don't mean this in any sort of as a slight or anything, but to me, she's sort of what Pam Grier was to blaxploitation is what Kansas is to like the modern ironic B movie or something like that.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So I felt like it was just a no-brainer to kind of put her in this sort of exploitation-esque film. Not that I would describe this as a B movie or anything,
Sure.
but it just seemed to make sense somehow aesthetically to put her in, and I think it was a good decision in the end.
I think so too. And she is very confidently on the film and carries herself very well. I mean, we can go there a little bit. There are a lot of women in your film, and some of them are in various states of undress. And I wanted to know the interpretation behind that is what's interesting to me. And I wanted to know, what was that like? I mean, working with body positivity and things like that in your film.
It was honestly pretty easygoing. I mean, I didn't feel like I had to. I wouldn't feel comfortable like trying to sell someone on any ideas or anything like that. It all kind of came pretty naturally. Again, I don't want to talk too much about meaning, but I will say
Sure.
that there's a particular scene you possibly referring to where it's an all-female cult or
Yes.
some sort of group. to me, that represented, in my mind, an interpretation of Mother Nature, but instead of it being a single mythological force, it's multiple. It's like an all-female,
like a coven of witches.
Yes,
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah. Well done. That's fantastic. I have one question. I wrote this question down. So I mean, I want to read this question I wrote down because I don't want to get it wrong. There's a long tradition of avant-garde filmmakers using ambiguity almost as a way of forcing the audience into participation, where viewers have to project meaning onto the imagery. Was that something you were consciously exploring with Matador Bolero?
It's hard to say because if I'm being completely honest, if I had the audience at the forefront of my thoughts, I probably would have never made this movie.
Right.
So yeah. I can't really say there was too much thought going into how the audience would react necessarily. But there was certainly a level of disregard which could play into what you're saying. And I also think that, you know, like it's weird because it's weird the stigmas that are present in cinema that aren't present in other art forms. Like you could see I don't know, let's say like a Mark Rothko painting or something like that isn't right. A figurative painting, and no one will ask, well, what the hell did that mean? Or right. You'll hear, you know, you listen to Miles Davis, incredible musician. You're not, after he plays the song, you're not thinking, well, what the fuck did that mean? You know, because there's no lyrics.
Sure.
But it seems like somehow, for one reason or another, people expect cinema to be understood so coherently as if it's like a mainstream pop song, and I just don't understand that. And I also reject that because me, as a fan, don't really care for those sorts of movies as my favorite films.
Right. I understand that because I mean there's different kinds of cinema. Obviously, I think we can agree on this. There are different kinds of cinema with different types of objectives, and one of the major objectives of cinema, unfortunately, is to make a lot of money, to sell to a mass audience, to make an enormous amount of money, a great return on investment, of giving people easy to follow narratives, not very complex characters, and universal themes that we can all connect with. And that has its place, and that's fine. And then usually you can find examples of that in superhero tentpole films for major studios, and that's fine. But I also think that core cinema is what you are doing. You're making a conscious decision to shoot on Super 8mm. Yeah, you could get access to a digital camera. You could probably make some calls and get some digital stuff and make your stuff look clean and perfect. But that may not be what's telling the truth for you. I remember a film movement that I became really interested in. It was Dogma 95. And it's Thomas Vinterberg made one of my favorite films of all time called Festen. And I urge anyone to check that out. But Lars von Trier ended up making Dogma 95 films, and there's like a manifesto and there's specific rules. But it was all about returning cinema, taking away its accoutrements of money and exotic sets, and it was all about returning it to its humbler, more primitive, rudimentary roots of just present to us what you think is truth. Who cares if it makes $1 million, right?
Totally. I think, yeah, I think that's a totally lost mindset in a way, especially in America. I think, you know, maybe European audiences or maybe something like people in Japan or something might be more open to an aesthetic film that's maybe more concerned with concept than it is point A to point B storyline. But in the end, I think those are the films that stick with you more than an easily resolved story. If you take something even like, you know, I'm trying to think like what's like an American master, like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Incredible film, legendary film. But there's a story, but you could tell that Kubrick was much more concerned with the concept and sort of exploring the world more than he was necessarily like neatly tying a bow at the end to say, this is the end of the movie. In the final sequence of the film, he totally abstracts it just as much as he does in the beginning.
Yeah.
So in a way, I would call that an experimental film.
Yeah, with a impressive budget, so the visuals are.
Yeah.
We'd all love to have a Kubrick budget, I think, if we were making films. Well, Jonathan Rosado, I am so pleased to meet you. This has been such a great discussion that I've had with you. I'm interested to see what you do next. I'm excited to see what Matador Bolero does as it is released and starts making its way. And if it gets released on streaming or whatever, I'm excited to see where your career goes from here. Are you currently working on anything else that you can talk about?
I'm a madman, so I'm always working on stuff. But I have I know what film I'm making next. I just got to find the money.
Okay. Well, I hope you get it. I hope you get the funding, because I think you have an eclectic, original, a very dynamic voice in independent cinema, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And if there's anything that this little podcast and its tiny sphere of influence can do to help promote you and push awareness of your work, I'm happy to do that. But thank you so much for being a guest on the Fixate Binge podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words. This was a great discussion. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, and that is the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you very much for coming back. If you listened to last week's episode and you've come back, thank you for coming back. Last week's episode, I felt like I had a good discussion with myself about America's fascination with, television villains and the way we seem to have rationalized their bad behavior and almost root for them. It's been kind of an interesting cultural shift to accept morally gray characters. And I had a fun time having that discussion on the podcast, but I'd love to hear from you. How did you feel about that topic? How do you feel about Tony Soprano? Is there a small part of you that roots for him, or Walter White that roots for him, or a small part of you that roots for Frank Castle in The Punisher? We're talking about those types of inclinations. Do we root for these types of people when we know that they have to do really, evil things, objectionably evil and inappropriate things according to society norms? And these types of characters seem to be fascinating to us, and they seem to be more embraced, a little bit like the character of Satan in Milton's Paradise Lost. The character is just more interesting, more fascinating, like Iago in Othello. Othello is a great character. Desdemona is a great character. Emilia is a great character. But Iago is the real interesting character because he confides in us. He actually brings us into the inner workings of his mind, the same way a Hamlet does, or the same way a Macbeth does, same way a Richard III does. We're co-conspirators because in soliloquy and in speaking to the audience, he brings us in to his mindset. And that seems to be very popular in exploring on television. And of course, as a medium of television, because you can spread so many of your character's development across seasons and seasons versus just giving us a character and wrapping it all up into a nice little bow in 2 films or a franchise of 3 films or even a single film. I think television has allowed us to explore the darker recesses and motivations of these characters. It's not saying that we can justify or dismiss the evil that they do, but if nothing else, perhaps we can understand where it comes from. Does that make sense? Okay, I've gone on too much because that was last week's topic, and we are talking about Matador Bolero for this week with my guest Jonathan Rosado, who's just a great guy, a very interesting voice in kind of avant-garde independent cinema. I wish him the best. I can't wait to see what he does next. And if you get a chance to see Matador Bolero on the big screen or stream it, I think you're in for a very unique viewing experience. You must know that going in. This is not a conventional film. So some people find those types of films challenging. But I think it helps to know going in it's unconventional. You're going to experience something you haven't seen or experienced before. So I liked it for that original experience that I had viewing it. Anyway, enough out of me. I'll shut up now. I'm glad that you're listening. I'm glad to be able to share this podcast with you. I'm glad I'm able to hopefully introduce guests that are fascinating to listen to, because I think anyone that works in entertainment, that works in filmmaking, is always interesting to listen to, because I'm passionate about it. It's something I love deeply. And I hope that you guys are in good places and treating yourselves well. And I hope the inner voice in your head, I say this all the time, but I hope the inner voice in your head is saying positive things about you and about your life and about where you are headed. Believe in yourself, invest in your dreams, and surround yourself with good people. And I think those three things are a key to a good life. I'll see you guys next week. I've got some very exciting things in development for future episodes of this podcast coming up. June's going to be a crazy month, so hang on and hang in there. Take care. Bye-bye.